Welcome to Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group, the number one community for all things contingent workforce, gig economy, and the future of work. I have an awesome topic that, is always comes to the lips of a lot of program managers that, we got to really open up the kimono and talk about it because it's one that's so important when either your predecessors or you have invested a lot of time in setting up a program, setting up relationships, and if it's not working out the way you expected it, often people think about changing things very quickly versus trying to optimize what they have. So I not only have a great topic, I have a great guest today to talk about this. And so the topic of the discussion today is stop blaming your MSP. And when we're talking about this whole insource versus outsource discussion, it's so easy to blame your MSP, throw them out and bring in someone new. But really, insourcing or outsourcing, it's a debate that no one really has in detail and nobody wants to have. And it's often they take the easy route and just change. Change may not be the best option. And to discuss this today, I have Joshua Combs from Liberty Mutual here. And Josh is the perfect person to talk about this. He runs one of the largest contingent workforce programs in the world. He's got over 20 years of experience, both on the supplier side, but really more so on the buyer side. He really comes to the discussion with a lot of practical experience around this and is passionate about the topic of thinking about taking programs from being very transactional and tactical to being more strategic. And so, Josh, thank you for coming on the show today and talking about this topic. It's a real fun one, and it's often a tenuous one that people tippy-toe around. But let's get into it, right?
I love it, Jeff. Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. Number one, I love to have contract labor conversations, right? And this topic, it is so, or it can be, I should say, so polarizing. People either, oh, MSP is the best thing in the world, or no, we got to insource everything. When in all reality, there's a solution for everybody's unique problem. And I think this conversation and peeling back some of the layers of this onion, hopefully is going to be really insightful. Hopefully it's going to be really engaging and mildly entertaining for the folks that watch.
I I think between the two of us, we'll make it entertaining, 100%. In today's environment, organizations are all sorts of pressures, like to reduce cost, increase the agility and quality of their workforce, and really help be more strategic, right? And so when some of the contingent programs underperform, there's this like knee-jerk immediate reaction to blame someone, right? And as we all know, there's so many moving parts in a program. Often it's not easy to identify just one of the issues, but it's always so easy to blame your MSP, right? Because they're the outsourcer, they're supposed to be the ones driving this. And reality is sometimes they don't have the ability to make it strategic based on a lot of those moving parts we
Yeah.
talked about. So, first question I always say is, you know, is the MSP really the problem often, right? And so
Yeah.
let's really dive into that.
No, it's I don't want to make a blanket statement and say no, the MSP is not the problem. In some cases, the MSP very well could be your problem. But I think with what you started to talk about, what you opened with, Jeff, is organizations tend to have a knee-jerk reaction when something doesn't go the way they thought it would. And that's something, it could be your contract labor program, it could be a rollout of XYZ software, it could be a lot of different things. When you see when you're part of an organization whose mentality is this didn't work, let's throw the baby away with the bathwater and let's move on to the next thing. It's like, hang on, wait a second. Let's start figuring out what was really the root cause. You know, be inquisitive, ask the five whys, start figuring out what went wrong here and why did it go wrong. Let's not just look at, we're paying you to do this, it didn't go right, it's your fault, you're gone.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many internal and external factors that play a role.
No, it's huge. And often, you know, there is this kind of mentality within our community that, oh, I know how to do this and I can do it better, right? By just insourcing it and bringing it in house. But we've talked about all the moving parts, but success also becomes part of what's the willingness of the organization to adopt a program, i.e., some of the political side of things. Like their change management tends to be one of the most important issues in program adoption. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, does the organization have the will to adopt a program and be structured, right? And then the
Right.
capabilities. And capabilities come with some cash, though, too, right? You really have to invest in those capabilities internally. And in some cases, they don't want, when you're in-house doing it, you're struggling for the head count,
Yep.
for an internal head count, versus outsourcing it and turning it from an internal head count to just part of an operational cost when you're using those resources to
Yeah.
get that
And
head
I
count,
mean,
right?
let's face it, while people like myself, people in the role that I'm in similar organizations and a lot of organizations, we try to point a lot at cost savings, time to fill reductions, things like this. Overall, though, to the organization, while we have cost saving elements, if you're an in-source program, you are costing the organization money. You're costing the organization headcount dollars, training dollars, travel, whatever it is. You're costing them money. Now we have an obligation to show, yes, we cost you X, but we're saving you Y. Now, if those savings aren't commensurate with the costs and things like that, that in-source program is going to get called into question quite often, right? And now you're taking a look at, well, insourcing isn't working. Maybe we need to outsource it. So it's this dynamic. And I think to your point, the change management, whether it's insourced or outsourced, the change management and the desire from a stakeholder and leader perspective to really get behind this program and support it and say, we've got it stood up, we're going to use this. Again, whether it's insource or outsource is massive. And for large organizations, mid-sized organizations, you may be looking at stakeholders that use something like contingent labor once a quarter, twice a year, something small. So how do you continue to build that momentum and how do you continue to um, use stakeholders, not use stakeholders, but how do you continue to implement a program that is widely adopted when so many of your stakeholders are only using it every once in a while? And on the bottom line, you look like you're costing the company money. It's like, no, no, no. So
No, and it's
it's a really
incredible,
difficult.
especially with so many sources of talent and
Yeah.
sources and ways to get work done, right?
Hmm.
The value that you need to show is constantly, what have you done for me lately? Because of that infrequent use of a lot of the
Yep.
stakeholders, I need to get this done this way. And if you can come to the table with the resources to get the work done, great. If you're not providing the value and they'll find a different way to do it. And like you say, headcount is a fixed cost, right?
Hmm.
So if the program is not being used to the extent you want, that the headcount is seen as cost, whereas an outsource is not cost until you're using
Right.
it. The way the current spend model, percentage of spend
Exactly.
models are, right? So it's interesting from a thinking about that and how it's perceived. So you got to be very astute in understanding, okay, this is what it's costing, but this is the ROI, and using data to prove that out, right? To show that, hey, listen, if we spend X and this is what we spend on our program, this is what an outsourced cost would look like. This is what an insourced cost would look like. And here's the different cost of it. And maybe we want to have a slightly higher cost because we know it's a variable cost versus a fixed cost, and we have that flexibility. Why is statement of work often used? It's because it's guaranteed.
Yep.
Yes, there's an additional cost put into statement of work, but you only pay when it's produced versus often in a contingent program, you're using labor without outcomes often. And so, yes, it might be cheaper per hour, but in long run, total cost is more. So it's interesting how the cost of an in-house program versus external program is also perceived, right? And how to talk about that.
Yeah, but the biggest point under all of that is being able to show the value, show the ROI. And again, whether you're insourced or outsourced, we have access to data today that like we've never had in the past. We have access to visualizing data, getting down to the minutia in our data, and we can show a lot of different ways that a program, insourced or outsourced, is creating value. Obviously, cost savings is a great one. But one of my favorite things to take a look at is what's our time to productivity for our resources. We have data like we've never had before. And that is also going to help you as a business leader decide, does this make sense to give to an MSP? Or because it's creating all this value, because I want all this internal knowledge, because I want all these internal relationships, does it make more sense to bring this in-house?
Yeah,
But the data is the key.
for sure. And I've going back to adoption, right? When you look at that discussion on insource versus outsource and getting leadership to buy in, often when they don't see a contract for $100 million that they've signed, it's not on their radar screen to make it successful, right?
Mhm.
When they outsource 100 million or a 500 million or $1 billion program to a third party, it's on their radar screen.
Yeah.
Have you seen that play out in different ways and be helpful in adoption? Or is it adoption of an insource program? Hey, we're run internally and a little bit more flexible, more consultative, and we're not using a third party, right?
I think it's a yes and type answer,
Yeah,
or a situational type answer, right? When you look at the adoption, let's start with, who are your champions, right? At what level is your program being, I hate to use the word mandated, but at what level are leaders getting direction like, hey, this is what we're doing. You need a contractor. This is what we're doing. I think it starts with that champion. Who can you get on your side? When let's say you're a brand new program, you're creating from scratch, never existed in your organization before. How can you create adoption across a mid or a large size organization, right? I can't go to 1,200 stakeholders, let's just say,
yeah,
and say, hey, here's this program, here's how you use it, here's what you're going to do. Right? I can put out some broad-based comms and this, that, the other thing, but you know as well as I do, a lot of those tend to fall on deaf ears, or they get buried underneath 75 other emails they received
yeah,
that day. So how can you create adoption as a program owner, again, for an internal or an externally run program, by finding some strategic champions? And this is something that I talked about with somebody prior, but it's all about finding those 5, 10, 20 people that can help create noise around what you're doing, around how your program is operating, around how it's saving money, around how it's creating efficiencies. How can you find people that will make some noise for you? How can you create this FOMO from others that are on the outside
yeah,
looking in? And one thing I'll say to that is, sometimes that noise isn't singing your praises. Sometimes that noise is, This was a tough experience. Why are we doing it this way? But that noise is almost more important for you to hear and to get out there than all the praises in the world, right? I need to know when the things I'm doing aren't working. I need to know when, hey, I worked with your MSP and I had these problems. What are we doing about it? Because
Yeah.
now it's going to start driving me as a program owner to take a look at that. Can we fix that? Or is there a serious problem with the model we've adopted? Do we need to take a look at a different solution? So, from an adoption perspective, I think it's really about finding those key champions, and whether that's a somebody with a C in front of their title, or whether that's your everyday users that are vocal, that are going to give feedback, positive and negative, or whatever it is, and create that noise around the program so you can start identifying, I'm doing things right, I'm doing things wrong, I need to make changes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and the other key stakeholders or partners in crime are really important too. So if you're in procurement, make sure you have got talent acquisition, but you've got information security, right?
Yeah,
When someone's coming to get something provisioned, and that's usually one of those gating
yep,
processes. If you don't own it as the program lead or the program team to get provisioning, find out who does that and make sure they understand the value of the program, some of the policies, of course, but really understand and become your champion. Legal is another gating
legal
process,
huge.
right? So if, you know, a way to get to talent is through legal, make sure you're delighting them with how you help them, how you're their champion and they're your champion as well, and how you've helped their stakeholders, right? So
Yeah,
they aren't working against you, they're working with you.
yeah, those a couple really great points. So those conversations with TA, for instance, a lot of times people can view those as, they're two diametrically opposed forces, right? Contingent labor and FTE labor. How do you change that to say we are one team fighting one, right? We've heard the phrase, oh shoot, I'm going to draw a blank on it now, but total talent, right?
Yep.
Total talent. And we've heard that phrase for about a decade now, right, Jeff?
Yep. At least.
And I question whether anybody's actually really conquered total talent acquisition. But how can you turn what you're doing into a positive for talent acquisition, and whether that's through the implementation of things like direct sourcing or anything like that? And how can you help talent acquisition with things like, hey, they've got some aging openings that have been tough to fill, or they've got some uber high strategic roles that are pulling their time. So maybe some of these tactical roles aren't getting the activity they want. How can you say, hey, let us help you look good? Let's fill some of these contract to hire. Let's do something like that. How can you bring benefits? How can you bring benefits to TA? How can they bring them back to you? And then the having your cyber folks or your provisioning folks as champions and very educated champions could be huge for you too. I look at them as the number one gatekeeper, right? If you want access, if you want logical access to my company, you have to get it through cyber or provisioning or some function of that. If they see a contractor coming through and they're like, we don't really normally get requests from some random one-off stakeholder that says I need this person to have access, that normally comes from Josh's team or talent acquisition. And if you can get them to reach out to you and say, hey, do you know about this? Like, that's a great bridge to build.
Huge. Yeah. Huge. Well, and especially when they know the value of what you bring and they bring them
Mhm.
back to you, right?
Yeah.
So, thinking about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Um, and the benefits of not taking a step back and not just throwing out your original investment and time and effort and building a program, taking a step back to understand it better and then look to optimize. Optimize is a general term, of course, but what are some of the value of really building a stronger partnership with your outsourced MSP partner? Or even if, let's say, TA was running a program, what you would do to optimize this with whoever is working within the program. Um, what's some of the value of working closer with your MSP partner?
Yeah, let's talk about that. That is a really good one because, I think again, when you are sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in for your organization, contract labor, contingent talent, staff augmentation, whatever you want to call it, so often became in the past kind of this add-on assignment to somebody in procurement or somebody somewhere, right? They didn't have the background, but they had the bandwidth. They knew a little bit about Talent Act, maybe, but they didn't have the true contract labor background. And it became very easy to say, okay, I've got an MSP. I'm going to take over that MSP. I don't know a ton about it. I'm going to learn a little bit and I'm just going to watch it run and hopefully it does great things, right? It can be a very hands-off, and I've heard many stories from MSP program managers and other organizations where it just became this very hands-off thing because the optics looked like it was running really, really well.
Yeah.
When in fact, when you start building this close relationship with your MSP and the program manager and their leadership and stuff like that, you're able to really, going back to peeling back layers of the onion, you're really able to start taking a look at, well, what is actually working, right? Okay, great. You've got 40, $50 million in spend annually, whatever it is. It looks like all things are going well. But when you start taking a look at it and your time to fill is, 3, 4 weeks, or
Yeah.
you're having these major co-employment risk gaps because they're not helping to educate or they're getting inundated with the day-to-day or whatever it is, you can have all of these pieces. The whole can look like it's running very effectively when in fact a lot of the pieces could be broken, misleading, or in just various stages of benefit, adding
Yeah.
value to your organization. So I think getting close in with your MSP is massively, massively important. I remember when I took this program over, one of the first things I did is I have to learn as much as I can about this. And I came in with 15 years of experience, right? What do I have to learn? I have a whole hell of a lot to learn about this program. Um, what did I learn? I've learned I've got a great MSP partner. I've got a great program manager. Okay, so now how can we start doing things better? When in fact, the program was exactly as I just said. It was functioning very, very well. But between myself and my program manager, after we really started peeling back the layers, it's like, we got some work we can do here.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, we ended up throwing a grenade at the program and starting from scratch, building something brand new, building something that we were passionate about, something that we could create passion and emotion around. And now we're seeing fruits from that are kind of, I hate to be cliched, beyond our wildest dreams, but really exceeding our expectations. But it's because I wanted to lean in and learn as much as I can about what's working well right now, because it was working, and where can we add different value to different stakeholder groups, different types of labor, whatever it is. So the value from leaning into that is massive. Don't
Yeah.
think because you've got $40 million in spend, it's all working great. There
And
are
it's a
always
matter
going
of
to be opportunities.
asking, right? Like part of this is if it doesn't work, you blame the MSP and you run another RFP and you get next person in. But at the end of the day, there is some reasons for that: style, capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
cost, all of those things that you think about that may have caused the issues. But in a lot of cases, a lot of the MSPs are very similar and have the same similar capabilities in terms of offering scalability, the market intelligence, helping with the risk mitigation and compliance strategies, all of those things. But it's a matter of working with them to pull that out.
Yeah.
If you are hands off and you just want it to work, you're going to have a transactional program. And when things go wrong, there isn't a culture of, working together to fix
Yeah.
it, right? And so I think taking that step back, deconstructing in some cases if needed, or saying what's working, what's not, and then strategically thinking about it with your partner and offering a culture of let's work together on this to optimize it
Mm-hmm.
is what you're saying and bearing huge fruit.
Oh, absolutely. Let's face it, programs like this are ever evolving, right? And too often, I think when people are like, oh, all right, we're a Gen 1 program right now, or we're a Gen 0 program and we're moving to Gen 1, or we're Gen 1 moving to Gen 2. All right, we got to go to RFP. We got to get a different vendor in here that can support us on this Gen 2 movement we're looking to get to. When in fact, if you are partnered closely with that MSP, you can take a look at what is evolving internally from the client side, from my seat, what's changing, and does this partner that I've had for the last 2, 3, 4 years, do they have the capabilities of matching? There's going to be some cases where no, they don't. And it's a very transparent conversation. It's a very strategic conversation. And now you know what path you have to go down. But in all too many cases, just like you're saying, Jeff, a lot of these MSPs have very similar, very overlapping capabilities. So when you're taking this program from Gen 1 to Gen 2, and you've got these goals in mind, whether it's globalization, capturing additional rogue spend, better compliance, better cost savings, whatever it is, if you've got this strategic relationship with your MSP and the program manager that's running this every day, you can have those conversations and say, all right, here's where we're going as an organization. Here's what the next 3, 6, 9 months, 2 years, 3 years looks like. How do we adapt our program to meet the needs of our ever-changing stakeholder base? But if you're transactional, if you're taking a step back and just kind of looking from the outside in, are you going to be in a position to really have those strategic conversations? I don't think so.
Yeah. And so you're touching on them, but some of the challenges of optimizing your program and thinking more strategically and causing issues where you feel that the program isn't working. Like, what are some of those challenges or failures, common failures that often cause that impression that the program's just not working? Is it expectations? Is it, poor communications? Is it the way you govern it? What are some of the things that you've seen that have caused programs to really become more transactional and often failing because either they're not doing their job in what they're doing while being used, or worse, a lot of the stakeholders are just not using the program and going around it.
Yeah. So obviously, there's many, many facets to that. There's a lot of reasons why it could be struggling, why it could be failing. You hit on communication. I think that's a big one. One of the first things that I did when I came aboard here, one of the first things that I would do with anything is you need to start with some of the voice of the customer conversations, right? You need to open up a path of communication to the stakeholders that are high use, maybe some of those that have had poor experiences or are the loudest about their experiences, good or bad. You need to understand what their experience has been and why are they super happy with it? Why are they mad about it? What went well? What went wrong? If you don't open up those lines of communication, you're taking a shot in the dark. And I think it would be very poor judgment for any person who's running a program to say, oh, I know what's wrong with this without seeking that feedback first, right? Um, Further to that, and kind of tying into it, another way some of this stuff can break down is, do you have the right vendor mix in the program, right? Whether it's internally
Yeah.
run or externally run. Your vendor mix and your vendor population is massively critical to your successes and failures, right? Do you have 70 vendors supporting a $30 million program? If you do, how is that an A-list program for any vendor partner, right? They're lucky to get feedback. They're not seeing the revenue they want out of the program. Your recs are probably slower to fill, all those things. Now, you combine those, the first thing I talked about, your communication, your voice of the customer, and then your vendor mix. You can have great conversations with both of those pools and start going through things like optimizations and rationalizations. It's a tough conversation to have with some of the vendors that have been supporting you for a while. But at the end of the day, if your stakeholder is aligned with those decisions you're making and you're able to start really reducing and really optimizing for your size program, you could be addressing two problems with one stone. And I think that's a massive win for any program. So I think the communication and the vendor mix, that's kind of one of the areas it starts breaking down. I think the other area it starts breaking down is, are you treating your MSP as a partner, or are you treating them as a tactical lever, right? They're there to do a tactical job. No bones about that, right? They're there to help you execute on getting good people in the seats that are empty that need to be filled. However, if that's the way you view that relationship, you're going to struggle really getting behind the curtain and evolving the program from a strategic perspective. How can you talk about having a strategic program when you're treating your partner as a tactical resource?
Yeah.
To me, that's an oxymoron. Those are opposed terms. If you're treating them as a tactical resource and not a strategic partner, you're going to struggle, and it's going to cause communication breakdowns. It's going to cause they may be afraid to take action on behalf of the program, right? I want the people that are supporting my program to feel empowered. I want them to feel like they are speaking for us as an organization, speaking for me as an organization. You have a level of trust together to where they know they have my support. They know they can go out and have a strategic conversation with a stakeholder, with a leader, with a vendor partner, whoever it is, because we are marching towards the same goals. Again, they've got some very tactical goals they need to achieve, but overarching all of that is the strategic objective of the program and the organization. Is your vendor partner aligned with what that strategic objective is? And do you have enough trust because you've built a good enough relationship with them to allow them to get out and speak on behalf of the program to leaders, to senior leaders? When you treat them like a tactical resource, I again feel like you're going to see a lot of breakdown.
Oh yeah, I've seen it so many times where if you put in the effort, if you're thinking of them as transactional, you won't put in the effort
Yeah.
to really give them the tools they need to feel empowered and be your ambassador, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're speaking on behalf of you, they're speaking often on behalf of the organization too. In the HR side and the talent acquisition side, employment branding is a huge deal. Often in this world, you don't hear about that, but it is a massive, massive advantage for
Oh yeah.
organizations because the best talent and the best vendors who have the access to the best talent have choices
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to put their talent and who they're going to work for as the talent. And so having that really great experience is so important. And if you're not aligned with your outsourced partner, they're going to feel it and they're going to act transactional versus passionate about your organization.
Yeah.
And
One of
the
the
greatest programs that had that strategic partnership, I've seen people flow back and forth between chairs where an outsourced partner, one of the MSP program leads, ends up internally working at that organization,
oh
or
yeah.
vice versa. The program lead that was managing it works at the MSP on behalf of the client now and goes back and forth because they're so passionate about or the part of the organization and acting as a strategic partner and
Yeah.
ambassador. It's
One of the biggest compliments that I feel like an MSP partner can get is from a stakeholder saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you were from a third party."
yeah.
Like that to me says they're ingrained. Now from a co-employment contract labor type perspective, like, right.
Not at
But I
your
tell you what, I
outsourced
love it.
partner, right? And that's
Yeah,
what that's
exactly.
why often it's branded. So it'll be like, here's the program and here's the program branding, as opposed to saying it's a TAPFIN program or
Yep.
a Allegis program or a Pontoon program, right? Like name of the outsourced vendor, it's a X. And so it really blurs the lines between is this outsourced to a third party or is this an internal team, right? That's running
When
it.
yeah, going back to the reference I made of, we threw a grenade at the program and rebuilt a lot of things the way we wanted to. It was such a fun bit of work to do because it allowed my partners, my MSP partner, to really put their mark on it along with me, right? We worked tirelessly to build this thing. And when somebody comes up to them and says, "Oh, cool, I didn't realize you were from the MSP. I thought you were a Liberty Mutual employee." It's like we hit the nail on the head. Then we built something that felt like an Insource program, even though it wasn't outsourced, and that transcends not just our internal stakeholders, but our external third-party vendors too, right? One of the big, putting my supplier hat back on from 14, 15 years ago, you used to hate getting into programs that were MSP driven back in the day, right? It was
Yeah.
black hole, no feedback, no manager communication, this, that, the other thing. One of the biggest benefits to our program partners, our third party partners right now, is we'll get people that say, oh, this just feels like it's an in-source program. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's what we want it to be, right? I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the whatever to have it in-source right now, but I want to build this with my external partner so it feels like it's an in-source program. So you're getting the feedback, you got the access, you understand the goals, you know where we're driving as an organization. Every year, I host our contingent workforce program supplier forum. We've done it in Plano, Texas, the last couple of years. And again, this isn't me patting myself on the back. I suppose it is a little bit patting myself on the back because we try to do things
Take it,
different.
baby. Take it.
Uh, but one of the biggest things
Just use
we
your
don't,
left arm, though.
yeah, right. We don't bring our partners in to talk numbers. Do we talk numbers? Of course. We spend 20, 30 minutes talking numbers, but we spend 3/4 of our day, and we're there for a full day and a half, right? We meet with them the day prior, we go out for drinks and dinner, and then we're in there for 8 hours the next day. We spend, and I kid you not, less than an hour that day talking numbers. We are there to talk strategy with our partners. We want them to get a ton of value out of it, know where we're going as an organization, know what our stakeholders are needing, know what changes are coming, all of these things. And for a vendor partner to come back to me afterwards and say, I've sat through so many of these things, the insight you give us, the value that something like this brings is second to none. That's what we shoot for. And that's what, when I say we try to run, even though we are an MSP driven program, we try to run it like it feels and acts as if you are working all the time directly with my organization.
Yeah. And so it was interesting you brought that up because this was my next question was the evolution of how you're working with your program team, right? And your program partners and within the program and the evolution of your role in that, right? Um, as a best practice to overcome some of the, pitfalls of driving it towards just being transactional program. So you mentioned you have your kind of vendor forum, right? Your supplier forum that you get together and you really get in a room and you bond, you talk about strategy, the focus of the organization going forward, etc. So you educate your supply chain and your vendor partners are probably acting on your behalf in that what else are you doing and how you do either govern a program, how the KPIs, how frequently you are working with your suppliers and how frequently you're meeting with your MSP to make sure that the strategy that you've set is moving forward in the right direction. Is it a
Yeah.
daily? Is it a monthly? Is it quarterly? How has your role and what you do evolved?
Well, I'll start out by saying, how often am I in contact with my MSP? Every 30 minutes, every
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
It's constant. Like I said, too many people that sit in my seat in similar organizations manage it from afar. That's not going to be me. Now, I'm not going to get deep into every rec and everything like that. They've got a job to do. I trust them to do their job. But when it comes to how are we driving this program forward, whether that's how are we driving new business, how are we improving vendor partnerships, how are we giving stakeholders better experiences, on and on and on. I am in constant communication with my program manager. Um, I mean, to the point where it's developed to a level of relationship where, and he was with me at a program earlier this year, and the joke was made, it's like, you guys share half a brain. I made the half a brain comment. Somebody is like, you guys are really aligned. I'm like, yeah, we share half a brain. Um, but for me, if you are not that ingrained
Yeah.
with your MSP and your program manager, how can you have a finger on the pulse of what's going on? To kind of bring it into everything else, my programs, when I run a program, there's three principles that we're going to abide by. It's going to be trust, it's going to be transparency, and it's going to be relationships.
Yeah.
So much of my time is spent, whether it's with my MSP, with the stakeholders, with our vendor partners. So much of my time is spent building on those three factors that I feel are critical to program success. I want to have a relationship with every single partner in my program, every single vendor partner in my program. I want to know who are their leads, who are their recruiters. I want them to feel like I am there with them and they can reach out to me at any time. I think that building that level of relationship with them is incredibly important because when I solicit feedback from a vendor partner, whether it's during our forum or one-off throughout the year, if I don't have that relationship with them, are they going to be, to my next point, transparent with me, right?
Yeah.
I expect a level of transparency. If something's working, not working, if you think we can do something better, I expect you to be transparent with me and bring it forward. Critical, critical, critical. And it all is kind of underscored or umbrellaed with a level of trust. It is very difficult to get into a program I run. And I've got vendor partners that will tell you I had to talk with Josh for 3 years before he let me in. And
Yeah.
that's no BS.
Yeah.
It's true. But I need to build a level of trust with you. And that doesn't happen overnight. Once I have that trust, I can take a lot of guardrails down within the program, right? How many MSP run programs, Jeff, do you know that allow vendor manager contact? We're in the minority. I can guarantee you that.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's because I trust our partners to have appropriate conversations, not go around selling out around the program, not doing these things that will torpedo us. If you can have that level of trust because you've taken time to build that relationship and build a level of transparency with your partners, your program, you're now going from having yourself as a single mouth for that program to having
Yeah.
dozens of people
The
that can be the talk.
scalability of
Oh,
your program multiplies with the more stakeholders that are acting as your ambassadors, right?
absolutely.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head that we are in a people business and we're in a service, like crazy customer service oriented um, business where you got to trust who you're working with
Yep.
because it's at 11 o'clock at night often when something you got to deal with in the morning, you're dealing with it at 11 o'clock at night. So in the morning, everything looks nice and smooth and
Yep.
is acting the way you need it. But that's a level of relationship that not a lot of people, if you just take a hands-off approach to it, think about because, oh, I'll just structure it and I'll have policies and everything will just abide by the policy. We're dealing with people that are emotional day to
Mm-hmm.
day, things change, circumstances happen, their kids, their wife, their, you know, what they had for breakfast changes what they do in a day. And
Yeah.
so when you have that variability, it's not logic, it's not policy driven, it's do the right thing driven and having partners that can really, be your ambassadors and portray your values of the program, etc.,
Yeah.
and drive things forward, right?
You hit the nail on the head with the fact of we are in a people business. And this is going to be a Josh Combs soapbox here for about 60 seconds, Jeff. And I thought maybe we would be able to go the entire time without me bringing up AI, but here I go. I'm going to bring up AI. One thing I'm getting overly frustrated with is when I'm hearing people trying to take the people out of our people business, right? Hey, we've got this great AI that does all of these other things and this, that, the other, whatever it is. And I got to stop them and say that doesn't matter to me. That's how you do your business. That's fine. That's not a differentiator. That's the way you should be doing business. Frankly, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but that's the way you should be doing it. But when you start removing the human from making the human decisions, that's when things start breaking down. You need to make sure we've got that human in the loop mentality that
Yep.
to your point, people are going to make decisions. We work with people that have a brain that make decisions that many times aren't the decisions we wish they would make, right? You need to make sure we keep the humans in the loop and they are acting accordingly for your program, right? I can't tell you how many times I keep hearing things about, oh, we inject AI into this and our, we've got automated text messaging to make sure the contractors are happy. It's like, no, you're missing it. That's when you learn. That's when you grow. That's when you understand what's going on. So sorry
100%.
that I'll come off the soapbox
No,
now, but
and I'm
human
a
in the human
big
business.
believer of using automation and
Yep.
AI is a way to automate things to bring human back because often policies and systems in our world were built to be protect managers, protect the program, protect the organization, and didn't allow for personalization. I think the automation in AI is fantastic when you
Hmm.
have it, it brings a human lens to it and allows you to scale what humans would be doing. So talking to people, those types, getting feedback on scale where you can then pinpoint and bring people
Yeah.
into the situations, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
really cool that we're very aligned in that idea of human. This is a people business, and humans will need humans to deal
Yep.
with it. And I've never
Yeah.
met a algorithm that has beaten a top-notch supplier at the last mile. Yes, on
Yeah.
sourcing and getting 1,000 candidates down to 10 in the ballpark, wonderful. That's a lot of heavy lifting it just did. But the last mile, human
Yep.
is really important because there's so many variables that just don't follow logic and policy that an algorithm would have to be set in. So,
Perfect. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that. And I want to say, I am a power user of GPT and automation. Absolutely love it. It does great things. But there are inflection points where human is critical.
yeah. So, we've talked, and I think me and you have talked for long times in the past too, and this could be one that we just keep talking because there's so many really important things, but I think that we always go down different paths. But this topic of really starting to take a step back and don't always blame the MSP and the idea of insourcing versus outsourcing is a very important one. And I'm glad we really hit on the idea of it may not be them, it may be you, right? That's causing things to slide into this non strategic transactional mode that isn't providing great value. And so some of the great best practices that were brought on and the evolution of how you're working with your MSP is been fascinating. And so, but I have to wrap up the conversation. Some of the nuggets and gold and takeaways, I always think about, you know, what can what can you do as the next steps? Because sometimes in this world we live in, it becomes overwhelming and you just say, I want to be more strategic, but you don't know where to start. So
Yeah.
if you were the Josh of, say, 10 years ago that really went down this journey of deconstructing and really starting to analyze what was good and what was bad and how can we think more strategically, where do you start?
First and most critical is take a step back and be reflective or retrospective of everything in its entirety, right? It's you don't want to be so quick to point at a symptom and not an actual problem. We see symptoms of problems everywhere, right? You don't want to be pointing at that and think, that is my problem. This is how I'm going to solve it. You have to take a step back and look at everything in totality. All right. So, number one, don't treat the symptom, treat the problem by having a holistic view. Uh, the second thing I would take a look at is understand your organization. All right. We started out talking about like knee-jerk reactions and stuff like that. Understand what the appetite of your organization is. All right. Do we have a heavy reliance on third parties? Nothing wrong with that, right? Make sure you know where your organization is heading and what type of support you're going to have if you're going to be bringing forward the idea of insourcing something like this.
Yeah.
There is a massive cost. There's a cost to the change. There's a bottom line cost that's going to be recurring for you. Know what your audience appetite is for something like that before you just float this idea out there. Do your research, come armed with it, be ready to discuss why you want to make these changes. Um, Third, and probably most important, is be reflective of yourself. right? Have you been leading this program the way you should be? Have you been as engaged, as involved as you should have been? Right? It's very easy to get caught up in the rest of your 9 to 5, whatever that may be. But before you look at making a massive change or evaluating the partners that you have in there, have you done the things that you should do as a leader enough, constantly enough, consistently enough, not constantly enough, consistently enough to truly say, yeah, I've given this everything I can. This is simply not working right now. And the last kind of nugget I would leave you with is whether you insource or outsource, if your processes and procedures and stuff like that aren't good, it doesn't matter if you insource or outsource. You're going to have the same problems. Make sure your processes are solid. It's like trying to bring in a software to fix a process problem. The best software in the world is not going to fix a
No.
process problem. And it's the same way for a program when you're evaluating internal versus external. Do you have the right processes in place? Do you have the right champions in place? Are these things working the way they should? That will help guide your decisions.
Amazing, amazing advice. And I think another nugget of gold that you've had a theme is communication,
Mhm.
right? Communicate with your vendor partners and ask them for advice as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the program partners that are out there have done it before, right? And they'll have lots of experiences in similar issues that you're dealing with, or similar company size, scale, issues, etc. And so being very vulnerable that you're not the expert and you need their help and advice transparently and honestly, I think is a great another
Yeah.
little nugget of gold that's been a theme throughout this conversation. So,
If you're ever the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
and this is why I'm talking to you. I love being in the same room with you. So,
Uh,
Josh, I can't thank you enough for this time. It's been awesome. It's been a long time in the making with our schedules, but
yeah.
I'm glad we were able to have the conversation in such an important topic. Thanks again.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Awesome.